From pound-for-pound fighters who have earned their stripes, to the promotions that are ranked according to their talent pool and formats, the competition is fierce both inside and outside the ring, especially between the UFC and ONE. ONE scored a big win by signing up Mighty Mouse. Demetrius Johnson is one of the greatest of all time. Becoming 13-time flyweight champ doesn't really leave many doubts there. So when he brought over his legendary talents to the ONE Championship, he was probably the promotion's biggest asset to date. It continues to pay dividends to this date, because once a champion, always a champion, right? ONE can thank the UFC for this acquisition. Dana White's promotion was Demetrius's first home. It further bred his determination and talent through a set of tough competitions. They were so tough, perhaps, that everyone in comparison seemed a letdown, like his clean knockout of Joseph Benavidez 2 minutes into round 1. Now imagine a career full of those, both in the UFC and later in ONE. But once he reached the flyweight world championship level, the champ decided to move up and also stood his ground in a different fight altogether: his pay. The American put it straight up, calling the UFC out for not giving him his due. While you got CM Punk over here making 500 bones, it was time for a change. But what's above and beyond the UFC championship, you ask? Well, the ONE championship belt. That was the next challenge for Mighty Mouse, and he took to it like a champ, once again matching up with the top flyweights in Asia this time. He was constantly pushing his limits, and as expected, he proved himself worthy of his name. The kickboxer was on a roll, as he made quick work of Yuya Wakamatsu and Danny Kingat, alongside anyone else ONE could throw his way. Ultimately, though, he got back to his usual place in any promotion: the flyweight champion. Others might stop there, but Demetrius is not like other fighters. He welcomed challenges one after another. Since 2019, he's taken on the toughest contender around, looking for someone to give him his talents worth in competition.
First time, we just fought, like it was just fighting. But this time he was more patient. I can hear his corner just saying 2 minutes, like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and I can feel each time he would get a takedown, he would just hold. It wasn't like he postured past my guard.
The former UFC champ now got just that, in the shape of a painful knockout, to which put another historic first on the record for him: his first loss in 15 years of fighting in pro MMA, delivered by former flyweight world champ Adriano Moraes. Though soon enough, Demetrius was back once again, this time against Rodtang Jitwainong. ONE even had to create a new special rules fight for their biggest flyweight star. What a legend, right? And an even bigger one for redeeming himself against Moraes. That too, just 5 months after taking on the Thai megastar Rodtang himself. With 13 MMA World Championships to his name, the American has always kept the MMA community on edge, in a very good way. There are very few who compare to his longevity, except for one John Linker. Johnson may have dominated a different division to Linker's, but both share rights to the GOAT status. They're also similar in that both fighters left their mark on not just the UFC, but also ONE. In his 13-bout win streak in the UFC, the fan favorite was also a publication's darling. His Hands of Stone title was proven time and time again, from a round 1 knockout against Troy Worthen in 2021 to a similarly exciting and, dare I say, hands-on performance against Bibiano Fernandez. His finish rate of 75% speaks for itself. The guy sure likes to finish what he starts, and when it comes to his knockout performance, it comes fully loaded and laser focused. It's precision striking at its finest. I have a feeling his latest and only loss yet over at ONE against Fabricio Andrade will be a wake-up call for him to come swinging right out of the gate once again. It was nothing he hadn't faced before. Hands of Stone defied the odds right from the start by signing up as a bantamweight despite protests of whether he could really make the weight. Not only did he take out John Dodson way back in the UFC, even after missing weight, he also brought his heart and iron chin to ONE. Several times though, his weight has threatened to end his career, like posting overweight almost 5 times in the UFC. I'm sure it was unavoidable and not something he'd been hoping for, but it still posed some big concerns for Dana White if he were to miss weight another couple of times.
I had more success in the first fight because both of us were going in there not knowing what each other's strengths were. This time we went in there more cautious. He was more intelligent this time. I was trying to defend more takedowns, and he was just trying to push that pace, and DJ did a wonderful job about that. Like, he came at me, my hat's off to him.
Still, the former flyweight tried his best to get up to size by moving up to the bantamweight division. Luckily, his strategy worked better for him at 1, but he was a wild card for the UFC each time he stood on the scale. It seems to have been a change for the better this time. Now, very few strikers are as lethal as Linker, and the newfound competition over at 1 probably upped his drive to compete at a late stage of his career. Since signing up with his new professional home, he's literally punched his way up through the ranks. It's a model many fighters would love to copy, if only their knockout strength allowed them to. And ain't that the truth? Brandon "The Truth" Vera could relate perhaps, as he got a new lease on his fighting career several times over. The Virginia-born fighter went through a career in the United States Air Force before becoming a globally recognized heavyweight. It must have been a pleasant surprise for someone who was dealing with an arm injury from his Air Force days even before his pro career had begun. But I imagine it was more sheer hard work and persistent knockout power that didn't keep him out of action any time during the coming years. When most would have given up on hopes of a fighting career at least, he debuted with a first-round TKO. The Truth pushed through numerous challenges in the next 12 years, but it was switching to one that defied all belief. Once again, where most fighters would have peaked and retired after more than a decade dealing with a hectic UFC schedule, Vera was only starting. Moving over to 1 by 2014 was his latest challenge, and the heavyweight picked up right where he left off. Things came full circle in another way this time, because his first-round stoppage over Igor Sabara was a throwback to his first pro MMA fight ever in 2002. That too was one for the ages, as a stunning first-round knockout. Y'all know how that worked out for him. Well, it was a familiar routine in his time at 1, as he returned a year later with another knockout over Paul Chang in 26 seconds flat. His 100% finish rate over his career is perfect. Now with the 1 World Championship under his belt, things were finally caught up to speed, with Vera's legacy including both 1 and the UFC. Since then, he's retired after 3 back-to-back defeats. But at 45 years of age, I think he deserves a rest. Kudos to The Truth. He knows when he's finished too, though hanging it up isn't the same as giving up by any means. From UFC to 1, and now to his coaching aspirations from his base in Manila, Vera can truly boast a life lived to the full. It does come with its set of hard choices, like deciding when to accept that things aren't working out. Brandon's response? Accept and move on. Move on he did, after the UFC's dismissal of him took him by surprise. Before that too, the initial contract extension from Dana White didn't signal the respect that Brandon thought he deserved. Luckily for ONE FC though, this allowed them to foster a partnership with the former UFC fighter, and he couldn't be happier. As he put it once, ONE FC is a whole different monster than the UFC. So I guess it all worked out for the best in the end. And that's all for UFC fighters who crossed over to ONE and absolutely dominated it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.